Alright, I think this is about to get serious now. I got my apron on. You ever watch Justin Rhodes? He has an apron. Dad always had one in the shop. I don't wear it around too much because it feels claustrophobic, but when I'm doing projects like this, it's handy. A little Stanley tape measure. Stanley used to be one too. My father used to have a lot of.
Now,
I don't know if.
the rest of the story.
Yeah, Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey News and Comment.
His name was Wade.
Always talk about Stanley Tools and True Value Hardware. Alright, so 24 1/4. Double check that one more time before I cut it. Cut it 3 times and it's still too short. So up here's the windows. There's one, and there's one on my right and one on my left. I'm gonna have to rip out the boards all individually because well, this side right here is 6 inches deep, and that one's 6 1/4. And I believe, just the way this was built, there's not going to be very much the same, so I don't want to go rip out all my boards at once. So what I'm going to do first is I'll rip out one for the top and the bottom, and then I'll case in the middle, but I'm probably going to have to shim it too by the looks of it, because it tends to go off to the right there. So I'll have to put something in here to bring it out. So I'm going to put this is a finishing blade, and yeah, they're only 7 1/4 blades. This thing looks like a 10-inch blade, but I don't have a finishing blade that's 10-inch. I've got a plywood blade that's 10-inch, and I have 2 construction blades that are 10-inch. Otherwise, we use these little skill saw blades here. Again, make sure the saw is unplugged. Some of these old saws were direct drive, and that's what this one is. A lot of them were belt drive. When I was a kid, I used to watch Bob Vila all the time, This Old House, and I liked Noam Abram. He was the Yankee Workshop, but I liked him the best. And when I was in high school, and probably in college too, there was a show called Home Improvement with Tim Allen, and sometimes Bob Vila would be on there. It was really funny. Tim Allen had a show that was called Tool Time, and yeah, Bob Vila was his arch nemesis. So I just have these junky boards sitting around, but it's split, but just not going to work because it's split wrong. I can use this side. Oh, I can't get. That's a waste. I don't know why it's split, but it's all broken. I thought I could get some out of there, but I have more upstairs. I'm just trying to make do with something I already had out. Got some more over there I can use. I need one 6 1/4, so I'll do that first. When you use table saw, you have to account for the width of the blade, which is only about 1/16 of an inch. But so you have to put your marker on the right side of the blade, and then when you cut, you'll cut down the line. You'll take the waste off the junk side of the board. Otherwise, it'll be too narrow every time. 6 1/4. Move. I always save these scrap boards. You can see it's got a taper in it, but I can get 6 inches out of it. And then this one here is split on the right, but I can use on the left. And for short pieces, this will work fine. All right, let's see how we did here. Here's 6 1/2, so 6 1/4. That's right where I wanted it. These boards are all planed. When I was a kid, Dad had a big Foley bell saw planer, and we'd get all the lumber from a local mill, so it was all rough sawn, and then we'd have to plane everything. And he had a jointer, or an edger as they call it, and we'd edge all the boards, and then you had to finish sand everything. So these are planed and edged, but they need to be sanded before I put them on. So I'll have to get out the belt sander and do that. And then the finish sander. I have a pad sander for finish work. We'll chop up the kindling here and get that out of here, so that'll be out of my way. A lot of these little ones like that you can use for something else, but this one's not much good. It's all split. So I'll just chop these up real fast. So it looks pretty good. I'm gonna go fit this in. As they say, measure twice, cut once. 33 7/8. I got to cut some 1x4s too for the frame, but I'm trying to get the case in. But I know I'm gonna have to shim a lot of that. Go down underneath the barn. I got some wood shingles down there. They're not that great, and they'll be fine for that purpose. I'll be right back. I guess she's gonna paint it like a baby blue in there. If we were gonna stain it, I would sand it as smooth as I could. Right now it's like a baby's bottom anyway, and then you put the first coat of stain on, you have to sand it a little bit, and then you have to poly it and sand it a whole bunch of times until it's smooth. When you start putting polyurethane on, it makes it rough again, so you have to keep sanding it, which in itself takes a lot of time. Some people will put these all up and then try to sand it after, and I like to have my boards all sanded first. Unfortunately, my air nailer is only for brads and staples, and I can put, I think, 4 penny nails, but I really want 6 anyway to get in there and get into something. So I got to run to the hardware store and get her some rollers. So I'll go grab them, and then we'll come back and put this one piece up and go finish up down back, and probably call it for today. Nice antique little square. Even though these boards came from the lumber yard, you need to check the end to make sure they're square, because often as not, they aren't square. When you use a belt sander, it's very important that you keep the sander moving. If you hesitate for even a second, you'll either put tracks on it or you'll gouge it. So you have to keep it moving. Boards generally have what we call a good side and a bad side, and even though there's a knot here, it'll stand out okay. But this side, you can see the knot where it's all pitted around that, so when it's rough, that'll be very difficult to sand that down. Whereas this side is smooth. So before you put your boards on, always check and see, you can sight down it, make sure it's square and plumb. You don't want to wee-wah in it, but also pick the side that looks the best, and you might have to flip it 2 or 3 times to figure that out. But a lot of times when I go by, I'm out there picking them over for a bit. There's a couple local sawmills that have planed lumber. It's pretty reasonable. I really try not to go to the box stores and buy lumber unless I'm absolutely desperate and I need something like yesterday, like on a Sunday afternoon or something. And so I very rarely buy lumber at box stores other than dimensional lumber. In the dimensional lumber, you have to be very careful too, because it's if they just open up a lift of it, then it's usually fine. You can find some decent stuff, but once it's been pawed over a few times and you got boards all over the place, it looks like potato sticks, and they're usually all twisted. You cannot build anything with twisted and crooked lumber. I don't care how hard you try, they don't straighten out. So you really have to start out with decent lumber and then store the lumber flat. Again, you can't have potato sticks all over the place. It has to be flat, and sometimes we have to stick it to dry it a little bit. But generally, the lumber that I buy has been kiln dried. It's just not like it used to be when I was a kid. There was no box store. The lumber yards all made rough cut lumber, and so you had to, if you wanted, this is 3/4. This is a 1x8, but when you measure it, it's 3/4 by, well, this one's 6 1/4 because I cut it that way, but if you wanted a 1x8, it'd be like 3/4 by 7 1/2 or something like that, because they measure it as rough cut and then they plane it all down. And so when you buy a 2x4, it's not really a 2x4 unless you buy rough cut. And so the box stores, I guess there was this lawsuit a few years ago where this lady flipped out and said, well, you're not really selling a 2x4, you're selling a 1 3/4 or by 3 1/2. And I don't know if she won or not, but now when you go to like Home Depot and Lowe's, you look at it and it'll say actual dimensions. So it'll say 2x4 and then the actual dimensions. But anyway, I'm on a tangent. I'm just gonna sand this down and we'll go put this one on. When I was a kid, after the snow came, usually my nephew and I would go in Dad's workshop, and as you can see down here, there's a basin for the sawdust. Well, he had the planer, so you can imagine the big flakes of of shavings and everything. So it was snowed, and Dad had a wood stove in the corner, so you could go in there and work barehanded. It wasn't what I'd say warm, but it was, 45 probably. But we'd go in there with our trucks and stuff and spread the sawdust and shavings around and use it like dirt, because we couldn't get to the dirt. It was wintertime. But anyway, I'll go put this one on. And why don't I pre-cut all my boards? Some people are good and they can pre-cut everything, go up there and slap it all together and it'll be mint. Unfortunately, I'm not that good. So I have to cut one piece, fit it, and then go cut another piece. And it's a lot of walking back and forth. And I could drag some of my tools up there to cut it, but then I've got another issue where I've got sawdust and dust all over everything in the room. So I don't mind the exercise going up and down the stairs. So I'm just going to cut one piece at a time, and that's just how we're going to do it. I did get the snow pusher up, but my battery died in my camera before I could get it up here. It was getting dark anyway. But that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.